Morning or
Okay,
afternoon.
folks, just so you know that the recording has started. So this is being recorded if you feel more comfortable with your camera off, but certainly smiling faces are always nice. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. And Dan, I'll rely on you if anyone does have questions there. I'm not able to get the little screen showing even the minimized version. I just got my slide here, so if anyone does have questions, just let me know. Awesome. All right, well, we're waiting on maybe a couple more, but we'll get started. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us today for this presentation. So my name is Robin Jackson. For those of you who have met me, maybe we've talked over the phone or we haven't seen each other in a while. So I'm the Direct Funding Resource Coordinator for the Waterloo Independent Living Resource Center. First of all, I want to thank all of you for attending today, both in person and virtually. I'd like to thank our community partners who are also in attendance today, virtually as well, for representing their organizations, as well as our representative guest from MPP Matthew Ray's office. Welcome to you as well, representing Firth Wellington. And I'd like to thank our guest speaker here today, Peter Zine. You guys will hear from Peter in a little while shortly. He's going to speak for us today. First things first, the goal of this presentation today is to engage and educate community partners, colleagues, potential applicants in the direct funding program. It's a program that's been around for many, many, many years, but not many people know very much about it. Or know how the process works or anything like that. So that's our goal for today, is just to educate and engage. We're going to talk a little bit about self-managed attendant services, how those apply to the independent living movement, and then talk a little bit about the specific process for direct funding, applying, how that process all goes. Okay, there will be some time at the end for some question and answers with either myself or Peter. Or if anyone else has questions, so just kind of jot those down as we go along. So just quickly, I just want to give a little bit of background here. So the Direct Funding Program of Ontario is a provincially funded non-income program. So we are funded by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. That funding is funneled through to our Centre for Independent Living in Toronto. They are our head office. And then the program is administered through 11 independent living resource centers across Ontario. So Waterloo would be one of those centers, but anybody interested in applying for the program would reach out to their specific center, depending where you are in the province. And those are all listed there. If you do have any questions about specific centers, I can get you in touch with those later on. First, just a little bit of background on Independent Living Waterloo Region. So we have a variety of programs, not just direct funding, attendant services, our community resource program, and the main mission amongst all these programs is supporting and championing independent living for persons living with disabilities through self-directed services and programs. So we achieve that in a multitude of different ways, direct funding just being one of those ways. But that'll take us into sort of the independent living movement. So this is sort of the reason, the backbone, the start for direct funding in general. So the independent living movement came to Canada in the 1980s. It's since reached around the world to change the way people view living with disabilities. The independent living movement does not engage in a collective advocacy, but instead encourages individuals to advocate on their own behalf through self-managed services like direct funding. Historically, consumers of attendant services had two options. There was sort of the supportive housing option where they could access attendant services, or sort of the attendant outreach in their homes. But there really was a lack of sort of that self-managed piece, the ability to sort of direct one's own care. And this led to something a little bit different than the traditional model, direct funding. So there needed to be a way for consumers of attendant services to self-advocate, self-direct, and utilize government funding in a fiscally responsible way. Hence, direct funding came about. So what is direct funding? So direct funding is an innovative province-wide program enabling adults with physical disabilities to become employers and manage their own attendance services. So that means that someone on the program, like Peter, we would refer to him as a self-manager. Self being the self-directed care, and then a manager of his own attendance. So Peter is responsible for recruiting, training, and scheduling his attendance services as needs dictate. A little bit on the history of the program. So direct funding began as a pilot project in 1994 and became an official program in 1998. Today, the program continues to grow and gain new participants, still operating out of all 11 local ILRCs in Ontario. Our staff help to support almost 1,000 self-managers in Ontario. And since its inception, the program has seen roughly 1,800 participants. It's considered a lifelong program, with many participants being active in the program since its inception. So the why of direct funding? Why would somebody want to participate in this program? We really focus on those 3 key orange words there: choice, flexibility, and control. So direct funding allows individuals living with disabilities to self-manage their lives, make their own choices regarding how and when they receive their attendance services. I do have just a couple of quotes on here. These are from actual self-managers on the program. Most notably, my family is my family now. I can't tell you how many times I've had someone come to me and say, you know, my spouse is taking on the burden of my care. You know, I really need to relieve some of that, right? So family, we know, is an excellent care resource, but there's burnout. So this program allows your family to just be your family. You can hire your attendants to take care of everything else. So Hazel, for you, I just want to point out, so the bottom of the screen has 3 quotations from self-managed on the program. The first one that I just talked about is "my family is my family." That's an actual quote from somebody. In the middle, we've got one that says, "there was no more feeling of being a burden, and I got a sense of myself, a new sense of freedom." That talks about a little bit of the freedom and choice that people have on the program. And then the third quote there says, "self-management moved me from the passenger seat to the driver's seat." Okay, you're very welcome. Yeah, just those are quotes that we've taken from people that are actually on the program. So actual stuff. Okay, so moving on to the who. So who would be eligible? Who does direct funding apply to? So direct funding is available to Ontario residents age 16 and over who require attendance services due to a permanent physical disability. They're able to recruit, hire, train, schedule, and manage workers for themselves. They require assistance with at least one of the following: transferring, bathing, toileting, or dressing. There is a long list of tasks that direct funding can assist someone with, but these 4 are sort of the core. At least one of those needs to be met in order to meet eligibility, and then are able to carry out employer responsibilities and manage their monthly budget. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what some of the responsibilities are in a little bit, but this is sort of just the key who would apply for direct funding. Okay, so with all of those, you know, what, why, who in mind, if someone is a person who can articulate what they're looking for in an attendant, knows when they want to have an attendant come to assist them, and would welcome the challenge, I'm sure you can attest to the challenge of hiring, scheduling, and managing attendance, then direct funding might be a good option. So following the who, what, and why, I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual application process. But before I do that, I'd just like to introduce Peter. Peter is just going to speak a little bit to the lived experience of being on direct funding, a little bit of background on himself and how direct funding has affected him. So yeah, Peter, take it away.
Okay. So a little bit about myself. In 1982, I had a diving accident over shallow water, broke my neck, and I was C6-7. If anybody knows about that, it's the borderline where you can take care of yourself. Usually most can't. So in rehab, He asked me what my goals, be independent of any attendant care. I succeeded in that for a number of years. I did my own attendant care. Then I got married. I ended up getting a full-time job at the independent living center in Niagara. So I worked there for 11 years. Having said that, my wife was with me and I started getting what's called cerebrovascular, a rare thing that happens to spinal cord injuries at the point of the injury. Cyst developed and I started losing my ability to take care of myself. My wife was helping me for a while and I came where I needed an agency to take care of my services. Problem was that the agency didn't always come when I needed them to come. And I had time to all of them scattered. So it was very difficult, but I put up with it. And then when I moved to Stratford, I joined up with the Independent Living Center in Kitchener here. And one of the things I remember working with Ian Parker, who was the originator of the program in 1990. So I am old. Things like that, and grandfather. Sorry, but it was always hard for me to accept it. People coming in and do my care. When agency did it, you get different people all the time. I changed agencies when I came to Stratford. It was Cheshire Homes, it's supposed to specialize in people with my spinal cord injury or my particular disability. And I didn't really want direct funding yet because I thought all of those things, I have to hire staff, live in a small city, and I have to do all this administration work with it. You know what? I have a tenant I liked, and it worked for a while until the tenant left. Then it was bad. I was finding I had my son who played hockey and had to get up at 6 a.m. and I had to get him up. My wife was having little mental health issues and left. And so I had to get my son 6 o'clock in the morning to go, and they would accommodate me, but then the rest of my time would be all 6 o'clock in the morning for the rest of the week. I had to get up at 6 in the morning and I wasn't working now. What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
I'm tired by the end of the night.
Yeah.
It was so annoying. So I couldn't get them to change because, well, we don't have these staff to do that. But I knew it's kind of really hard. And if anything went wrong, you have to wait hours before something happened when, people have disability, that you have confidence issues and other things that could happen. So I was finding it really, I didn't want to do that anymore. I filed for direct funding and I tried to recruit some of the people that I liked from Cheshire and I did. And it worked much better. As far as the fear of the administration, that was taken away. At the beginning, I hired an accountant. That doesn't work. Accountants don't really know how to do this program. So I actually got a person who's a kitchen and my bookkeeper is wonderful. If one of the fears I have is bookkeeping, I'm gonna do that. I have such a good bookkeeper, I don't have to worry about that. As you can tell. Other things I worry about is hiring and living in a small town. I'm the only one presently in Stratford on the program. Now, the difficulty with that is can't share attendance, like if somebody else's attendance and they have someone that needs jobs. My time is so small where each day I only have a couple hours in the morning and an hour at night. And sometimes I'll need more during the day for things. And that is really hard to get a person to pay their bills. So I hire the attendant, right? And they would have to have another job and I'd have to tell them that they're not gonna pay your bills. So you need to get another job or they had another job. So I still struggle with a little bit of that. I start a lot with hiring people because these days people don't seem to want to tell you they're not coming to the interview. So I ended up in the hospital recently. My son was trying to help me hire. He said, "Oh, Dad, nothing to worry about. There's 5 people coming to interview." Now, I was really, in my mind, past experiences was they were hard to come to the interview. So one came to the interview and he said, "That's a definite no." So he helped me out, but I always, when I interview staff, the wonderful thing about it is you can't interview the staff. So many people came in the outreach program in Cheshire who just did not care. They just wanted to check. And one even told me, or they didn't want to do the dishes. They didn't want to help me on this. The wonderful thing is the ones that I have now, they care about me. They care about me so much. And recently I didn't have Thanksgiving weekend covered. I actually hired some person. And I know there's people that when they know I have gaps in my calendar, they're always there. They don't just say, "Oh, well, so what?" Like this agency would. They say, "Okay, I'll see what I can do," and they rearrange your schedule to fit me in. Even take some of the social life on in order to fulfill the calendar. The reason it's so good It's like you develop a relationship with them. That wasn't allowed under the agency, to actually hang out with them before lunch. But these ones, my workers really care. And so they won't let me go. One even says, we're never gonna let you have the abandoned bed. And I never have since I've been on the program. I did many times when I was on the agency. So I really like the point of that, develop relationships. But the other problem we have, I'm competing against agencies, hospitals. Stratford's a very medical community, you might think. And one of the problems, of course, is the fear of not finding someone. And I know that I've had to interview so many people to get the people I need, but it's worth the time and effort. And I really enjoy the program. So hiring is one of the things that you kind of go, oh no, but the good thing, as mentioned, there's only two choices: supportive living housing, or you have outreach. Now, the outreach wasn't too good, didn't work very well. I own my home, so I don't want to sell my home so I can move in a supportive housing unit. And even if I did, there's a long waiting list to get it. And it works so well with my own home. It works so well when people come in, respect my home. How many people have seen me naked over 40 years? Right? I once had statistics on it. I mean, so the person you want to come in, you don't go, oh, no, not them. It's really nice that you can control who dresses you, who takes care of your personal care, that you bow to you. And bow to is one thing I did by myself, but after being in the hospital, one of the things I ended up eating was something like that. And I have to get used to it. And as long as I make them feel comfortable, they're comfortable doing all these things, even though they haven't experienced. I have more people that have no experience, and they're willing to do everything for me because I developed that relationship. I respect them, they respect me, and we have a good visit. I'll be doing all the care for me. So the direct funding is a wonderful program. All those fears, they're there. All those things that you kind of say, well, it's kind of a gamble. It is. You know what? I would never, ever go back because this gives me the independence I need. I'm a very, very busy person. I do things every day. I'm advisory committee for Stratford on accessibility issues. I do a lot of personal speaking engagements, and I speak publicly so many places. And I need to be there, dressed right, not looking like a slob, not worried about accidents. I always know that I feel confident when I speak. I feel like the independent living center has made me so much better. And I can fulfill the things I need to do. So, yeah, they were questions. I'm very glad he talked to you. Because normally I speak 40 minutes, but I got 5 minutes.
Yeah, we have the time limit.
So,
Thank you, Peter. I just want to let everybody know, Peter and I were preparing to give this presentation. I told him not to sugarcoat anything. I said, let them know what it's like, what some of the struggles are being on direct funding. But don't like crush their spirits or anything. So So I think to touch on some of the things Peter said, right? The struggles with the hiring, I think that is, anywhere you go, but building those relationships, I think that's a really positive thing.
And how can you find people to hire for this job? Like,
You know what? Well, maybe what we'll do, Janet, is I would love to allow everyone just to ask the questions to Peter, like individually. If you have specific questions, we can ask Peter at the end. We will come back to that one, if that's okay. That's a really great question. I'm sure Peter has lots of answers for that one.
I tried everything, so I can turn it over.
So thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate you, giving real life experience on, what it's like to be on direct funding. And just for yourself, Hazel, there, the screen that we have up here, just because I didn't touch on it at the beginning. So it's a photo of Peter in London, I believe, in his chair. And then we've got the text here. He started as a self-manager in 2016. And then he did touch on the fact that he does advocate and public speak in the world of accessibility. So that's just the text that's on the screen for you, okay?
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so we're gonna get a little bit into the nitty gritty. I'll try not to go into too much of the detail here, but I'll give an overview on the process to get going on direct funding, what that looks like, what that means, if anyone is interested. So I kind of broke this into 3 main steps. So step 1 is completing an application. So the most important thing, to get started on direct funding is the application. There's lots of materials that go along with the application, resources, FAQs, eligibility information. So all of that is available by contacting the local independent living resource center, like myself. And completing that application, getting it approved is the important part for getting onto the wait list. So the wait list does vary depending where you are in the province. I would probably say anywhere between 12 and 24 months, depending on where you are in Ontario. So just getting that application is number 1 step, because getting on that wait list is important. Step 2 then would be preparing for the direct funding interview. So to keep it kind of brief, once you're at the top of the wait list, you've done all this time waiting, you're gonna get ready for your direct funding interview. So first step in that would be working on building some schedules. So you'd work with me to build some sample schedules on what your week's gonna look like on direct funding. How many staff are you gonna hire? We're gonna look at making your schedules make sense, making them efficient, right? Within the scope of the program. And then you're gonna be presented with materials that you'll be using to help answer questions in the direct funding interview. So this is questions about employment legislation in Ontario. How do you become an employer? What are the things you need to do as an employer? Some of the requirements on the program, which we'll touch on a little bit later. And all of that study material comes as a package, and that's what gets you ready for the direct funding interview. Once you've interviewed, that brings us to step 3, starting on the program. So you guessed it, more paperwork. So step 3 is going to be more resources will be given to you in order to prepare. So this is when you would start choosing a bookkeeper to help you with your payroll. You're going to start the hiring process. And all of that is provided to you, and your resource coordinator is a resource for all of that. Okay. Then that's it. Then you're on the program. I said there's a lot more that goes into it, but I'm not going to go into every single detail. We can definitely talk more detail one-on-one if you want some more questions. I just wanted to give a little bit of a background on being a successful self-manager. So this is where I'm looking at Linda and Martin. These are the things that you need to do so that Linda and Martin are happy. Once on the program, participants have a number of responsibilities. So it doesn't just stop once you're on, right? There's a number of things that you'll have to do, including adhering to program approved budget, and reporting on expenditures on a quarterly basis. So our lovely friend Martin is the one who reviews all of these reports. So you want to make sure that you've, reported all of the incoming and outgoing. Undertaking roles and possible risks of an employer. Right, being an employer is not all sunshine and rainbows, right? There's some risk associated with that, and we do our best as a center to prepare you for all of those possible scenarios. And then following all employment standards outlined by CRA, WSIB, and ESA. So as a self-manager, you have to learn what all of those acronyms mean, if you don't already. And adhering to public health and infection control protocols and standards, right? We saw a big change of this with COVID, so there's different protocols that are set up by the program that self-managers need to stay up to date on. Okay, and managing a program approved budget. So this is those reporting requirements that I mentioned earlier. So this would be a quarterly report accounting for all the money coming into the direct funding bank account, going out, including all bank reconciliations, your payroll records, pay stubs, anything you send back to the CRA and WSIB. And then, your annual T4s and any ROEs. So an ROE would be if an attendant were to leave you, you have to issue them a record of employment. So there's all sorts of, little things that go along. And this is kind of the administration side that Peter was mentioning earlier, right? He was a little worried about all this admin stuff. How do I learn how to do this? How do I manage all of this? And that's where your resource staff comes in and your bookkeeper comes in, right? So we're all working as a team to make sure that our self-managers are successful, right?
Right.
So that's everything in terms of the steps. What I'd like to do is, at the end, if there's any specific questions on the process to get on, I would love to address those. I'm just gonna go through some quick facts on the program here. This is just stuff that doesn't really fit into the presentation, but I think it's worth mentioning. Not many people know that funding can be used at home, in the community, or when traveling within Ontario. Self-managers can actually keep all clinical services from the HCCSS. So that would be nursing, occupational therapy, or physiotherapy. So you would be able to keep those and just use attendant services with direct funding. Travel incentives are available for shorter shifts and commutes to rural homes for attendants. So if you're worried you live somewhere a little bit far out of town, we've got incentives built in your budget for that. I've already kind of touched on this. You do all of your own recruiting, interviewing, and hiring based on your needs. You can hire anybody except immediate family. Okay. And then self-managers make your own schedules, which could include medical appointments, grocery shopping, emergency, and overnight shifts. And I've just got one more slide here. A few more facts. Currently, the top wage for an attendant is $22 per hour. Self-managers can train attendants for care in their colostomy and ileostomy equipment, change non-sterile dressings, and assist with exercises and range of motion. Another little piece of direct funding would be the nurturing assistance. This actually is a separate amount that can be added to a self-manager's budget for assistance with babies and young children. And that would be, you schedule an attendant for that as well. Currently, the smallest budget is 15.7 hours a month, which is very small. Our youngest self-manager is 18 years old and our oldest is over 95. And then lastly, coverage for personal medical alarm can be covered by direct funding for those who would benefit, or for those who would benefit. So that's just some facts that don't really fit in, but I thought that they were worth mentioning. What I'd like to do now is open it up to questions and answers. I'm going to leave the contact information for Independent Living Waterloo Region on the screen for anybody that needs to take it down. I'm the resource person for this center for direct funding, so I would be your first point of contact, and I can get people started on direct funding. So what I'd like to do is open it up to specific questions for Peter or myself, anything that comes to mind.
Robin, just
Okay.
a suggestion.
Yeah.
When you're in full screen mode like this, it'd be a bit more personal. We can't really see you or
No
the
problem.
people in the room. So maybe we can put the card up again at the end for people to write down information.
Yep. Great. Should be back on us. Yes, Hazel.
I'm wondering about hiring a bookkeeper, like, do they provide the funding to hire a bookkeeper, or
Yes.
how does that work?
Great question. So not only does the program provide the funding, so you would have a monthly amount that you would pay a bookkeeper or a payroll service. We actually give you a list of recommended bookkeepers to choose from. That list would be bookkeepers who've been with the program a long time. They have self-managers who they're already working with. They're familiar with some of the reporting requirements. You know, not all accountants, bookkeepers are made equally. So we give you some recommendations to get started. It's just easier because they've already worked with self-managers and they can actually kind of give you some good tips on how to proceed when you get started.
So they would look after all those items that you listed there that had to be covered?
Yes, so the expectation, so if we talk about the direct funding interview, so in the interview, you'll be asked questions about basic payroll, right? So, you know, what are the deductions that come off of an attendant's paycheck, right? You got to know the basic information, you know, where does the money go when those deductions come off a paycheck? So the expectation is that someone coming on the program would know this basic information and have an understanding. And then the bookkeeper takes care of all, I guess, like the heavy lifting, right? They're doing those remittances for you to CRA. They're helping, you know, direct all that money. And they're, you know, assisting you with payroll, but you have to know how it all works.
Okay, that explains it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Do you have that question?
Oh, yes.
About hiring, people to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the ways I use this Facebook, I use Facebook friends, and a lot of them would send it out to their friends. And it works for a while, but when you see your ad a lot of times, it doesn't work so well.
Mhm.
Yeah, people get tired. I don't have a huge amount of friends so I'm not really into Facebook that much. Another way I've done it is through word of mouth. But when I hired a person who was a PSW at the hospital just recently, this I found really helpful. She has like a whole bunch of friends in that field. And so when she went to a friend, put an ad that I sent her, and she put it on to the friends, that's when I started getting people showing up and actually had some experience. So it was much more helpful and more effective. So now I'm using a lot of my other attendant work for me and sending out, I get most people through Facebook. But there's other ways you can do it. I mean, newspapers aren't good anymore. So I don't know, that's most times when I get word of mouth or Facebook.
In general, Janet, I'll also recommend Indeed to people. Indeed's become a really, really big platform for hiring for self-managers. Some people have luck with it. I think you find in Stratford it's a little tricky.
Well, I get from people from other countries who are looking for a person to get a job so they can get a sponsorship. I get more of that. Indeed hasn't been really that helpful. I've used it, I have hired people from it, but it's kind of.
I think it's gonna depend where you live, right? You know, I think our self-managers in sort of Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, Hamilton, bigger cities like that, you're gonna find some more luck with sort of Indeed. Some people still use Kijiji, not very much anymore, but word of mouth, you know, it might be a big one for you, right? So, you know, you let people in your life know, you know, I'm starting on this program, direct funding, I'm gonna need to hire some people, put those feelers out now. And then, you know, you might get people through that method, word of mouth. It's a big leap. Yeah, when I told Peter not to sugarcoat anything, hiring is a challenge. Hiring is a challenge for organizations across the board. It's a challenge for hospitals and everything as well. So, you know, we give you as many resources as you can to be successful. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of time, right, Peter?
Yeah, I think before COVID happened, it was much easier, but now it's much more difficult. And so you really need to know people.
Yeah.
And I'll just add to, because I don't know if it was mentioned that, like, I review my job is sort of reviewing all quarterly reports that every self-manager sort of submits.
Including mine.
Including the Peter's, and I would say that, one thing that the program also does is that, we'll reimburse for if you wanna, do paid advertisements.
Yeah.
On like, Facebook or Kijiji or Indeed and stuff like that. That's already in the budget for sort of miscellaneous expenses, basically. So, and that in itself, to get technical, allows like if you have an ad for a caregiver, that then goes to the top of searches and stuff like that on that website. So it's, that's another aspect where it's so flexible and in that contemporary times, you need to be super flexible to find your care and everything. So that's sort of the added bit too, is that a lot of people will like do paid advertising and stuff like that. So,
Thanks, Martin.
Yeah.
And thanks, Steve.
Yeah, two quick questions. Does the program require any particular credentials on the part of?
On the part of the attendance?
Yeah.
Great question. No, so we really leave it up to the self-manager's discretion. If they would prefer to hire somebody who is a PSW with those credentials, they're free to do so. But a lot of our self-managers actually just train up the people that they want to hire, right? So someone comes in maybe with, you know, a non-healthcare background and they say, you know, I really kind of want to give this caregiving thing a try. The self-manager would have the opportunity to train them up with the skills that they need. So, you know, depending on the self-manager's needs and routines, that work well, but some choose to hire.
So, for Peter, has there been a qualitative difference between a credentialed person like a PSW and someone?
Yeah, a lot of times, people who are trained PSWs or they've been in place, they want to do things their way and not necessarily the way I am, so they come with these preconceived ideas of what you're gonna do. And if something's different, they're like, well, no, you can't do that. So I found that I have a lot of success with people who have some interest in healthcare. It always helps if they have something, whether they took care of their grandmother or whatever, those things are a little better than, so I've had more success with, if I'm trying to think if I have maybe one PSW on my whole side. So it's a lot better.
And one other quick question, when you talk about application, does that require any kind of medical input? Does the physician have to sign off on it? Or-
Nope. So I don't know for people maybe that couldn't hear. So he was asking if the application requires any sort of a medical input, like doctor's notes or physician input or anything, and that is a no. So considered a non-medical program. We build each individual self-manager's budget based on their needs, so it's very individualized. There's no sort of medical input needed. So if anyone is curious, I've got some application packages at the front there too. So feel free to look in there and see what's in there. There's a lot of information. But really the onus is on the self-manager or the applicant to become a self-manager, to know their needs. They should know kind of what it is that they're looking for on the program. And then we use that knowledge to build a schedule, build a budget that makes sense for them. Yes,
You mentioned grocery shopping, but someone told me that they're not allowed to take us, actually take a person shopping.
so on the program, you can, so the attendant, you would have the option, and we would talk about that when we looked at building a schedule. So if the self-manager or the incoming self-manager preferred to attend with the attendant shopping, we would look at building that in. Some self-managers prefer just to send the attendant out with a list to do the shopping for them, so it's kind of based on, I guess, where you are as well, right? In more rural area, it might make sense for the attendant to just pick things up on their way into town, for example. So it would really depend on what kind of setup you were looking for.
I see.
Yeah. Good question. Any other questions? Anyone virtually?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
You're trying to find someone, have you had self-managers connect maybe with some of the schools, like that are doing PSW programs or anything like that? Has that been
Go ahead.
helpful?
That's a good question. I had at one time two that were nursing students at Costello, and they were excellent. However, I have a real hard time with the program supervisors to actually want to come, and I don't know why. When I was in the hospital, I was trying to recruit a couple, and I did recruit one from there. But when I talked to the head of the program, Conestoga, they wanted to look at it and to help me with that. But when it came to ask me about what can I get any of the students to be interested in, putting something on the bulletin board or something that I'm looking for people, they didn't even answer back. So I asked one of my people that was a student, and she said they don't want it because they want supervision from their own people, which is really frustrating because the ones I had in nursing school, they became nurses. They told me that they learned more from hearing from me than they did for anything else. Because I had experience with a whole bunch of people with disabilities because I worked at the independent living center. And they said, don't learn from me. So I wish they would. Still trying to connect, but I'm still working on it. And like I said, I've been around certain since 2016, and I'm still working on getting some cooperation.
Just to build on that, like, I think it would worth a conversation with some of the schools as well, like, you know, community boards or whatever it is, having something posted. I don't know if anyone's had success posting physical ads. Like, in terms of like connecting with the schools, we don't get a ton of response back, but hopefully we're hoping to build on it a little bit because it's such a good resource, right? We can't do like the clinical placements through direct funding. But even just like part-time work while they're in school, something we're looking to build on a little bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to do something. I haven't given up on that. About this program or this seminar that we're hoping that people recognize the importance of the direct funding and how helpful it is for those who are going to college or want to decide whether they want to go in nursing or just be a PSW. And that's what I'm trying to do. So I have talked to some people in school, in BP's watching down, contacted them and the mayor, so all these things we're trying to work on, getting some sort of network with the school students so that they can look and see, hey, I want experience, why don't you tell me this, you know?
Make sure.
And just to add to your question, I'm Linda Kerrigan, I'm the regional report coordinator for the Lower Office. I look after a great number of people in the business area. I have one person in Toronto who had extreme success, all of which came from colleges. She did not hire anybody unless they were in college. And she had a wonderful, like, she had a lot of care, she had a wonderful way of organizing that. And, so it can be done. And I've had a couple of others in other areas of Ontario. Stratford just may not be one of those areas.
And part of the problem is we don't have.
Yeah. They want to keep their people, so that they're gonna go to either the hospitals up there or the long-term care facilities or someplace that is structured and not self-managed. So, but this individual and a few others that I know have actually had quite a bit of success getting students from colleges,
I'd like to talk more.
they from the university as well.
And I think that's a good point, Linda. Like, I know that a lot of self-managers hire students, and I'm not sure whether or not they've recruited them on their own, or I think what Sharon is touching on is like through partnerships with the schools, right? I think there needs to be maybe a more of a focus on partnerships with, Conestoga College, PSW program, nursing program, things like that. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, a lot of self-managers hire students because they, if any students are just looking for a few hours a week or whatever it is, it kind of fits well with the self-manager's schedule, depending on how many hours they have.
So it's a good hire.
Yeah.
The students I've had, well, no, like I've had a lot of turnover because I don't give them a full-time job, so it's kind of like a stepping stone to what we want to do. And if they're interested, they do a really good job. And I've really enjoyed the ones I've had, that's why I want to continue to go after the students.
I'm wondering about benefits for employees.
At this point, direct funding does not offer any employee benefits in terms of like health benefits or anything like that. With COVID, there was a temporary, COVID sickness benefit that was offered through WSIB. I don't know if that's active anymore, but the program itself doesn't offer anything at this time.
It'll just be a straight dollar per hour arrangement.
Yes, yeah, the dollar per hour. There's different ways to structure budgets. So sometimes we work in flat rates for different things like medical appointments. Or there's the travel incentive that I mentioned earlier as well. So if you've got maybe a really short shift, you're paying that attendant maybe for an hour visit, their hourly amount, and then maybe a little top up in terms of like a travel incentive for having them come up for a shorter shift. So there's different ways to tweak a budget, I guess you could say, to make it more attractive for attendance, but the program does have certain limitations. Yeah, good question.
Do self-managers share attendance?
It's a good question. One of the things, there were a couple people in Stratford before, but they passed away. And they had some attendance when they passed away, I got them, and that was not the way I wanted to get attendance, but that's what happened. But I know that that's what I hope to have in Stratford, is more people on the program so we can share attendance. And it's really cost effective for the government to accept all this, because they're saving money.
Sorry,
Right.
what about in a larger?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna expand a little bit on what Peter said. Yeah, so we actually have, it's called the Self-Manager Network. So it's actually a contact info network that the program manages. So when a self-manager comes onto the program, they're offered the opportunity to join the Self-Managers Network. They'd be provided with contact information for anybody who lived in their general area to be able to do resource sharing. So sharing of attendance, sharing training resources, whatever it might be. And that's province-wide. So it's it's like an opt-in that the self-managers can join. Unfortunately, Peter's the only one in that area, so.
Lonely.
So it doesn't help Peter, but.
Do you share bookkeepers?
Well, the bookkeeper I have has a lot of people. I got it on the list. I was really having, now, at the time, she made room for me because she was full. But they are shared. And that gives a lot of people.
Yeah, most of the bookkeepers that we have right now, they have a lot of self-managers that they're working with already. I think we've got maybe, in our area, maybe a couple of new ones that are still looking for more people, but a lot of them are already working with lots of self-managers.
It's really good to get people who know bookkeeping interested in the program, right? And they would have a lot of people because, they have to learn how to do it, right? And it is a tricky thing, and try and complicate it. That's what happened to me. It was a disaster to ask Linda, she knows. The beginning was a rough road. But if we get more bookkeepers involved in this program, that would be a lot better.
All really great questions. Anything else?
Hi, my name
Okay.
is Patty and I'm from MPP Matthew Ray's office.
Yes.
Patty.
Hi, how are you? I just
Hi.
want to thank you for letting me join in today. I guess my question would be from a provincial government perspective, other than dollars, is there anything that we can do to help assist? I know that we don't have a lot of experience in the direct funding program because we don't have a lot of direct funded participants in the Perth Wellington area. So it's been a great learning experience for me. I'm his constituency assistant, so I try to help people with all the problems that they're dealing with in these kind of programs. What can we do to help?
That's a really great question, Patty. Thank you for asking it. I think just awareness, spreading the word about the program, right? I think that there would be a lot more support in Perth Wellington if we could just let people know about the program and sort of spread that word. You know, I know that MPP Matthew Ray and yourself and, you know, other staff there probably connect with the general public all the time. So if there's anyone that you speak to who you feel might benefit from the program, or maybe they mention, you know, my sister, you know, has this need or that need, you know, just letting them know that we're here. And then
Is there some physical literature that you could send our office that we could put out for you?
there absolutely is. I'll send you some virtual material and I'll also come and drop off some physical materials at the office for you there. I'm actually in Stratford too.
Oh, okay.
I want to continue that. If there's any way you can somehow, we're talking with the colleges and get them to understand that, well, for instance, well, I won't talk about the funding, I'm just going to do that. But if there's some way that you can link, people that are involved in ministry health or hospitals, whatever, that have a way that we can advertise in the hospitals and in places that we can have a central place that we contact, that if I need an attendant, I can contact, like home care, I talk to them, through home care on transitional programs, so when you get out of the hospital, or you end up having a real need, emergency need, you can't find someone. There might be a way that there's an emergency help. Because there's some days where I actually have no one, home care can help, no one can help, and it's really difficult. But it always worked out, that's because we went another way. So I don't know what I'm really asking, but a central place that there can be a database of maybe students who are interested in becoming a PSW or a self-manager or a nurse, if they get experience through this program. Those people I'm looking for and can't connect with colleges.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Peter. Like, as far as the database, I don't know how that would be possible, but
I don't know either.
could certainly bring that to the Ministry of Colleges and Universities and see if they have any ideas.
Great.
And I think it's just worth opening up the conversation, Patty, right? So just opening up that conversation, how do we get more information out there to anyone that needs to hear it?
Yeah.
Sure. And as far as the amount that is paid, is that dollars figure set by SILT or is it set by the ministry?
That dollar figure set by the ministry, that $22 that we're at now, was a recent increase in 2022. It was built on the sort of the temporary wage enhancement that we saw over COVID. So we've kind of reached that $22 permanently. I know that SILT is always advocating for more and they're in communications with the ministry all the time. So, you know, obviously more money means more success, but.
Catherine Nguyen frozen at $19 for anyone that was in this type of program. And that is well below it. Right now, Stratford United Way is promoting that as minimum wage. That's or a livable wage. So
Right.
we need, I know there's other agencies in Stratford that are paying more for their PSWs
Mhm.
through the Ministry of Health. I'm wondering why, we don't even have an agency really, and we're a cheaper option for you. So we need competitiveness, because I know I've lost them because of wage issues.
Sure.
Good question, thanks. And I'm so glad you came and listened. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep people too long. I know we're kind of close to, we had a couple minutes to 1 o'clock. Are there any other questions virtually from our guests or here in person?
I'm wondering, when we hire, do we give them like a travel, like, is that gonna be included in the money that we get to pay them?
Like a travel
Like a
incentive?
travel, so much per kilometer, the time.
No, so there's no, you don't pay like mileage or anything like that. So the only travel would be if there was travel incentive built on for like a short shift or a location that was further away. So, it would kind of be based on what your budget schedule looks like, but there's no sort of mileage paid or time travel or paid time for traveling, if that makes sense.
So when I was in my program, I was telling them I need people from other areas besides Stratford, like Mitchell or wherever, and I had some people from out of town. So I was allowed to give a $5 short shift for the hour. I had the hour, was the short shift at nighttime that I needed to go to bed. So I was allowed to give them $5. So that was the kind of incentive when the time.
Yeah. And it's all sort of individualized based on the budget, so.
So-
Yes, Hazel.
So is everyone paid the $22 an hour then, not depending on their experience?
I mean,
Yes, that.
that's the cap on the program. We have a range that we authorize. So the bottom of the range is $16.50. The max wage is $22. That being said, most people pay the top wage regardless of experience because it's really hard to get people and to remain competitive. Most self-managers are paying the top, sort of the really the top of the line there because they can't get people otherwise. So,
Right.
Yeah.
The minimum wage and the United Way campaign to up livable wage has actually hurt us. Because now people say, well, I'm not gonna work $22 an hour, which is just a couple of bucks over minimum wage. And what do you say? Because they're doing medical stuff, free stuff that they're not normally suited for. And the only reason they stay is because they love the program. They love coming into my home rather than Rigid Hospital or Mount. They love coming here, but to pay them in competition, and then I wrote United Way about this, that this is hurting those who can't afford or aren't allowed to pay more because of the restrictions by the Ministry of Health. So we need.
I'm just gonna give an opportunity for staff. So we're just past 1 o'clock. So I just want to give an opportunity. Anybody that has to run, please do so. I don't want to keep people longer on their lunch breaks. I want to thank everybody virtually for attending. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me. I can connect you with Peter if you have any specific questions for Peter as well. But thank you very much for joining us. I will make this presentation available, the recording as well, for those of us who had some technical difficulties. But thank you, thanks everybody.
And Matthews Ray's office can call me anytime.
Yes,
Thank you, Peter.
He is ready, waiting.
And would you be able to email us the PowerPoint presentation you had?
Absolutely.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, everybody. And anyone who's here in person, if you have more questions, I'm still here, Peter's still here. Yes, thank you all for coming in person as well. Please help yourself to any refreshments that are left there. There's drinks over on that table as well, but thank you very much.
Thank you.